that anyone can observe our democratic meetings. Please therefore remember that this meeting could be watched anywhere at any time by anyone with access to the internet. There are subtitles available via the YouTube broadcast. These are generated by YouTube. The Council is not responsible for these subtitles or their accuracy. There is a delay between the meeting and the broadcast of about 30 seconds. Webcast officer, please can you confirm that the broadcast is running?
Hi Jess, it's running now.
Thanks very much, lovely. Good morning and welcome to today's licensing hearing on Thursday, 30th of July 2020. Before we commence with the proceedings, I can confirm that the Council has adopted some basic etiquette rules for its remote meetings. For ease, these are as follows. Only speak when the Chairman invites you to do so. Members, please let the Chairman know when you want to speak through the chat function. The Chairman will introduce speakers in the order that the request to speak was made, unless there is a point of order which will be prioritised. Please minimise all distractions while you are in the meeting. Please mute your microphone when not speaking and consider turning your video off too to reduce interference on the audio feed. Please bear in mind that there may be a lag between speaking and other attendees hearing you, so please bear this in mind. Reports and supporting evidence has been made available to you in advance of the meeting. When referring to a report, please quote the page and paragraph number. If you lose connection at any point and are unable to immediately rejoin, then please call the meeting facilitator. Contact details have been provided. Please only use the chat function for the purpose prescribed for requesting to speak or for a point of order. The chat function is subject to the Access to Information Regimes FOI, EIR, and is also subject to data protection, rules of defamation, and the Council's Code of Conduct. I can confirm that the meeting is quorate and may proceed. I will now hand over to the Chairman, Councillor Peter Schweer. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for that introduction, Jess. Good morning. My name is Councillor Peter Schweer, and I am the Chairman of this Licensing Committee. We are still new to virtual meetings for licensing hearings, so I would ask everyone to be patient and understanding as we feel our way through this new way of working. This hearing will be held in accordance with the procedure which was published with the agenda. However, we are holding this meeting as a virtual meeting, and I would like to outline the process before asking the members of this subcommittee and parties to the hearing to introduce themselves. Members, today only the applicants are in attendance at this hearing. The objectors were invited to attend the hearing and an invitation was sent to them. The Council may proceed to deal with this application in the absence of the objectors. Please can I remind members that the objectors' letter, which is on page 28 of your agenda, will be included as part of this subcommittee's consideration of this application for the premise licence. The hearing will be conducted as follows. The hearing will commence with the members of the subcommittee introducing themselves. I will then invite the applicants to introduce themselves, followed by officers. Before commencing the hearing, I will attend to any requests for the submission of any additional information. This hearing will commence with the licensing officer outlining the application we are here to determine. I will then invite the applicants to set out their application and to address any points which they wish to make in response to points made in the representation about this application. As there are no objectors in attendance, members will be invited to ask questions of the applicants. Please can I advise all parties to this hearing that questions are permitted, but not cross-examination. The hearing will then move to closing statements. I will invite the applicants to make their closing statement. No new matters may be introduced during closing statements, but the applicant may wish to summarise points they wish to make, including commenting on response to questions. I will then ask the legal advisor whether there are any matters which need to be addressed before the hearing is adjourned for deliberation in private in accordance with the provisions of the Licensing Act 2003 Hearings Regulation 2005. At this point, I shall ask all parties, apart from the subcommittee members, the legal advisor and the governance administrator, to disconnect from the meeting, and live streaming of the meeting will end. During the period from the end of the first part of the hearing to the subcommittee announcing the decision, there will be no contact with the parties to the hearing, and parties cannot submit additional information. The hearing will be adjourned to Tuesday, 4th of August 2020, when the decision will be announced together with the reasons for the decision. All parties to this hearing are invited to attend the hearing on Tuesday to hear the decision. I will now proceed to introductions. As mentioned at the beginning, I am Councillor Peter Schwer, and I will be chairing this meeting, and it should be available for you to be seen at the bottom of your screen, along with my fellow councillor colleagues as well. The subcommittee for this hearing consists of 3 members. The additional 2 members are Councillor Lynn Walters and John Ball. Can I please ask the members to introduce themselves?
Good morning, I'm Councillor Lynn Walters, and I hope you're well today.
Councillor Ball.
Good morning, I'm Councillor John Ball. Thank you very much.
Please can the applicants, Nicholas Rose and Rosin Jones, introduce themselves, please?
Good morning, I'm Roisin Jones. A little bit about, do you want to know anything about me, or is that enough?
No, that's fine, thank you. Just a bit identify.
I'm Nicholas Rose. I should explain my peculiar accent. Even though I'm from around here, first came here in 1963, I was educated in Canada, which for some reason that accent never left me. But I've been living back here for 20 years. So just by way of explanation, and I'm the co-applicant.
Okay, thank you very much. As mentioned at the beginning of this hearing, there are no objectors in attendance. I'm also joined by John Meddings, a licensing officer, and Emma Wisby, our legal advisor. This hearing is also supported by a meeting facilitator who you've already heard from, Jessica Mann, and governance officer Alison Webb, who will be taking the minutes of this meeting. I will now proceed to apologies for absence, and I believe there are none, but I will ask our legal advisor, Emma, to ensure that's correct.
Yes, Chairman, that is correct. There is no apologies for this meeting. All members for this meeting are present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will ask if any members have any declarations of interest that they have in the proceedings. Members?
None.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
John. Thank you, Chairman. I have no interest whatsoever in this meeting.
I have no interest either. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. It's noted that you have no interest whatsoever.
Chairman, just for the avoidance of doubt, could you please kindly confirm whether you have an interest, please?
Yes, of course. And I absolutely have no interest to declare in this matter either, although I know the village well. Thank you. Thank you, members. Can I please confirm that all members have read the report? Before I ask my fellow colleagues, I would like to confirm that I have read all of the report. Councillor Walters.
I can also confirm I have read the report on 2 occasions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I can confirm that I have thoroughly read the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Can the applicants, Mr. Rose and Miss Jones, confirm that they have received and read the report also?
We have.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. If a party to this hearing wishes to submit any information which has not previously been submitted, it may only be submitted with the permission of all the parties to the hearing. Please can I ask the applicants, Mr. Rose and Miss Jones, if there is any information they wish to submit?
As a point of order, there was some confusion about the witnesses and the witness statements. In the original information that we sent on the procedural document and in the counter that we were meant to supply, there was a lot of information about who our witnesses would be, what their statements would be in support of our application. We were then told that the witnesses would not be invited to this particular meeting. We have submitted their particular statements in support, which Alison Webb very kindly, I believe, forwarded to everybody. I just wonder if they get entered into the record, if they have been read, or if we can read them.
Yes, I will refer back to Emma, our legal advisor, for that, but I have seen those and I read those, and I'm sure my colleagues have as well.
In which case, that's absolutely fine.
Chairman, if I may, I can confirm that I gave advice to the applicants regarding the witnesses. As I've explained to the applicant, the witnesses should be able to give evidence to support their application. So it's important that they can provide information that demonstrates how the applicants would run the premises should the licence be granted. Unfortunately, the statements were on other matters surrounding the community and matters regarding licensing, which are outside the scope of this application. However, Chairman, we have admitted those witness statements as part of the applicant's information, which because they do have some parts which go to the character of the applicant, and they then can stand as is. As members have confirmed, they have received all those documents and they will consider those as part of the overall documents and the evidence is submitted as part of this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bohr, you wanted to mention something.
Yes, I must declare that I haven't read the witness statements. I haven't seen those, and I tried to download your presentation this morning, but it wouldn't play ball, to use a Canadian expression possibly. So I haven't seen that, but that is the same as your script this morning.
Chairman, if I may just address the point about Councillor Bohr receiving the information. Councillor Bohr has had the report, which is the substantive element of the application and the objections. The witness statements are available. When we retire in deliberation, I will ensure that Councillor Bohr does have sight of those witness statements, so they will be taken into consideration and have the appropriate weight attached to them as required for considering this application. So although Councillor Bohr has expressed he has not seen those this morning in deliberation, he certainly will have sight with those, and if there's any point in part of your presentation, Ms Jones, that you wish to make that refers to those, then we will ensure that Councillor Bohr is aware of that when we retire for deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Okay. Please can I ask a point? So that additional information will be allowed and has been submitted. In which case, please can I invite the licensing officer, John Meddings, to outline the application before us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. The application that we're dealing with today was received on the 4th of June 2020 for the grant of a new premises licence for Rose's General Store, 13 Bridge Street, Bures Hamlet. The application was subsequently deemed valid the following day on the 5th of June. The purpose of the new application is solely for the sale by retail of alcohol for consumption off the premises. The specific details are in the application as part of your bundle. The application has also detailed a number of steps within the operating schedule to promote the 4 licensing objectives. I can confirm the application was properly made in accordance with the Licensing Act and all procedures correctly followed. During the 28-day consultation period, the application received a representation from an interested party, which is also part of your bundle, and has led to this hearing commencing today. I'm here obviously to answer any questions you have, but that's the application. Thank you.
Thank you for that, John. Please can I invite Mr. Rose and Ms Jones to present their application now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'd like to present our case in 3 parts. Firstly, the reason for the application and the opening hours that we're requesting. Secondly, the measures we have in place to ensure that we meet the licensing objectives. And thirdly, the assurances we can give to the objector that his concerns are addressed and mitigated. So firstly, the reason for our application and the opening hours we're requesting. We are the owners of the last remaining shop in the village of Bures. Until January this year, the shop was tenanted and run as a confectioner, newsagent and tobacconist only. That tenant has now left, and we're currently renovating the premises to turn it into a full-service general store. It will stock a wide range of products, mainly fresh fruit and veg, bread and baked goods, packaged, chilled, frozen foods, household products, and so on. We want to offer alcohol to make this a complete service for the 2,500 people who live in and around Bures and who currently have to make a 14-mile trip to the nearest shops in Sudbury. I'd like to emphasise that this is a village shop that will sell hundreds of products. It's not merely an off-licence. In terms of shelf space, alcohol will represent approximately 15% of our stock, as you will see on our shop layout plan. 85% of the shop space will therefore be given over to non-alcoholic goods. We're applying for a premises licence to sell alcohol during shop opening times. The opening times will be 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Wednesday, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Thursdays and Fridays, 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturdays, and 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Sundays. We have requested a late opening on 3 days of the year during the Bures Music Festival. This is a major community organised event in the village, which raises thousands of pounds for charity and attracts around 1,500 people a day. Many of the visitors camp on site, so we would like to open on those 3 days only until 11 p.m. to cater for them. I would now like to move on to my second point, which is an explanation of the measures that we have in place to ensure that we meet the licensing objectives. First, the prevention of public nuisance. I think it's important to explain here that we are not absentee landlords. We live right next door to the shop. In fact, it's attached to our house. So it's not in our personal interest to allow any kind of antisocial behaviour. If the sale of alcohol from the shop was perceived in any way to contribute to public nuisance or antisocial behaviour, we would be in very deep trouble with our neighbours and our many friends in the village. Our one full-time employee, Sophie Winch, is also our designated premises supervisor. We chose Sophie because she worked in the shop when it was a newsagent and is familiar with the premises and its customers. Sophie was born and grew up in Bures and knows most of the people in the village. This is a great advantage in dealing with anyone who might potentially be troublesome, since the chances are she will probably know them and their family. I would like to stress that we're not relying solely on our DPS to ensure that the licensing objectives are met. As the owners of the shop, we're fully aware of our obligations under Section 182 of the Licensing Act. Additionally, I am booked onto a course to gain my personal licence as well. In terms of litter and noise, rubbish by the security firm. The alarms are connected to Central Station with Police Response Level 1. They will also sound on both of our mobile phones. We will have 3 CCTV cameras inside and 2 CCTV cameras outside, all with 14-day record storage. Appropriate signage indicating the use of CCTV will be posted. Fridges and shelves stocking beer and wine will all be visible from the till area, as you will see on our floor plan and the layout of the shelving. Spirits and more expensive wines will be stocked and displayed in a lockable cabinet behind the till, and so will only be accessible to the staff. Challenge 25 protocols will be implemented to prevent sale of alcohol to minors. All part-time staff will be trained by the DPS and made aware of their social and legal obligations, their responsibilities regarding the sale of alcohol, and how to log incidents in the ledger book, which we will keep in the shop. Public safety. We have a number of safeguards in place. The shop is being completely gutted and renovated to the highest standard to meet or exceed current health and safety legislation. It is being designed for maximum visibility and minimum hazards. The entrance is being rebuilt to allow wheelchair access. Sophie, our DPS, is a qualified first aider and holds a Save a Life certificate, as well as a Food and Hygiene Level 2 certificate, a Health and Safety in the Workplace certificate, an Epilepsy Awareness certificate, and a Prevent COVID-19 certificate. We will follow government's COVID-19 guidelines for retailers. Until further notice, we will allow no more than 3 customers in the shop at any one time. We will provide hand sanitizer at the entrance and at the till. Surfaces will be regularly disinfected. There will be 2 sinks with hot water in the shop so that staff can wash their hands regularly. And the fourth element of the licensing objective is protecting children from harm. Sophie is a former nursery assistant and is extensively trained and holds certificates in a number of child safety issues, including grooming, neglect, health and safety, and first aid. Both Sophie and I hold a current DBS. Just to conclude this second point, we have had communications from 3 relevant agencies, police, fire, and environmental health, who, having been consulted, would appear to have no objection to our application. I would also like to say here that we have also had a unanimous vote of support for our application from the local parish council. We'd now like to address the specific objections that have been raised in the letter of representation.
Just a point of order, Thank you, Regine. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Does anybody stand in for the objector in the absence of them being here?
I'll ask Emma that question, but I don't believe at the moment, no.
No, Chairman, the objectors were invited, so they've not sent a representative, which they could have done if should they wish to do so. So we proceed in their absence. But as the law requires, the objection from them still stands. It's not voided just because they simply don't attend the hearing. It just means that there's a limited opportunity for the applicant through our procedures for this hearing to explore the concerns of the objector. Thank you, Chairman.
Precisely the reason for my question. Thank you for that very clear answer. I'll just take care of this section of it, if you don't mind. We understand that the objector has no problem with the village shop, but only with the sale of alcohol. In our research, all the general stores we have been to in villages roughly the same size as beers have premises licenses. For the simple reason it is the only way to make it financially viable. I will now address the problem with youths drinking and causing damage within the village. The objector describes a unique situation on the Bureau's recreation ground that occurred as a perfect storm of events in the midst of a national crisis. The end of a protracted lockdown, furloughed employees, schools closed, and record-breaking weather. This was a nationwide problem and was reported widely in news media. We have forwarded a PowerPoint to the committee with images from various front pages of newspapers to illustrate this, but I think we're all familiar with it. During this period in May and June, Beers was trending on social media as a place to congregate. Social media is not localized, so people were driving considerable distances to get here. As the local police said at the time, when they held a meeting on the recreation ground to address concerns of the parish council and residents, the village actively promotes the annual music festival, so it is not surprising that Beers should be on people's radar as a place to gather. However, like so many social media fads, Beers has now fallen out of fashion, and the large groups of young people have largely disappeared. We do still get visitors, but these are people who come to the river to go paddle boarding or canoeing, or families who come to the village for a picnic by the river. Second, the objector is concerned that the sale of alcohol could increase this problem. Hopefully this concern will already have been allayed by the fact that the large gatherings on the recreation ground have now gone away. However, we would like to assure the objector that we have measures in place to militate against any future concerns. As stated in our application, we have to abide by the strict guidelines of the licensing objectives previously outlined, which would mean no sale of alcohol to minors nor anyone who appears intoxicated. Furthermore, we would not sell alcohol to anyone who we believe would inflict antisocial behavior on us, our neighbors, friends, or fellow villagers. It is simply not in our interest to do so. This policy would equally apply to anyone we believe will be buying alcohol on behalf of someone else. Hugh Connerty, a local resident, ex-local constable, and retired detective sergeant, and Matthew Ward, a local resident and deputy head teacher, are 2 of our 3 witnesses who supported our application. Their grounds are that the alcohol consumed on the recreation ground was purchased at supermarkets where the cost was significantly less and the availability of bulk purchase far easier. This is fact, not purely anecdotal, and it is further borne out by 2 local personal license holders who work frequently at local events on the site in question. Matthew Ward, the deputy head teacher, lives immediately next to the village common that is referred to in the objection. He states, and I quote, "The Bureau's common, just across from the shop, is frequented by families enjoying picnics. Some of them consume wine or beer, and this has not resulted in antisocial behavior." The objector refers to the late opening hours request. It should be noted that the request is for only 3 nights of the year and only until 11 o'clock, which is within the national guidelines for alcohol sales. This was to coincide with the dates of the Bureau's music festival. As this is a long-standing charitable endeavor contributing generously to local causes, we wanted to be able to support them and the visitors camping there. as the festival has its own license, we would expect the sales on those evenings to be primarily food, barbecue, charcoal, etc., for the campers at the event. The objector's third point is that the 2 public houses in the village are adequate for the alcohol needs of the village. Dr. Dennis Brogan, a resident, retired GP, personal license holder, chairman of the Key Theatre in Sudbury, and co-organizer of many local events, states in reference to the lack of local amenities, and I quote, "I am concerned that the diminution of resources has significantly disadvantaged some of the most vulnerable members of the community, namely the elderly, infirm, and alone. These have to travel to Sudbury or Colchester for provisions and are denied the benefits to health, convenience, and companionship a local shop would bring. Also, my professional and social experience make me aware that many of these folk, although liking occasional alcohol, would be extremely reluctant to enter a pub, even for off sales, and are so denied one of life's reasonable pleasures. I therefore firmly support the shop's plan to sell alcohol as an inherent part of its service to the community." I should add here that the reference to the 2 pubs, only one of those pubs is licensed for off sales, and by their very nature are prohibitively expensive. That ends our submission for the application. Repeats what we put in the form.
Okay, thank you very much for that thorough presentation. Before I ask my colleagues if they have any questions, could I just ask, you mentioned the fact that you have roughly 15% retail potentially going over to alcohol, and that the more expensive parts will be behind the counter under lock and key. Could I just inquire as to potentially the security of the other alcohol, i.e. your stock, and how you will secure that as well?
It will all be stored on the premises, which is fully CCTV and alarmed. We, because the shop is quite small, and our suppliers are, for the most, other than the cash and carry folks, are local. For instance, our wine supplier is in Earl's Cone. We're going to operate on a just-in-time basis. It's going to be pretty frantic in the shop, but we will be storing everything within the shop. There will be no storage offsite.
So just slightly further on from that, then will customers, they will not be able to access that or see it in the shop then? Your stock, I mean.
Everything will be on the shelves. In other words, it will come in boxes and be put either on the shelves or into the chiller cabinets.
Okay, thank you. So all of your alcohol will be on display and there'll be no stock and security.
There'll be
okay,
no stock.
Thank you very much.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you for that. I would now like to ask members if they have some questions for the applicants. Councillor Walters, can I ask you first if you have any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your explanation and on your application. I have no questions to ask, and I think I have read all the reports and I have seen all the backup letters that you've had and you've received. I have no questions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chairman. I must admit, a very full presentation and a very comprehensive explanation of the measures that you propose to take, which leaves little scope for questions, actually. But I have one. I was curious about the 6 o'clock opening and just wondered who would be your clientele at that time of the morning, and why you decided on that particular time.
Understood. The in doing our research, the Bures has a funny demographic, though it's quite a rural community. They also, because we have a railway station in the village, there are a number of commuters who go into London first thing in the morning. Sophie, who worked in the shop before, between the commuters and the builders, various contractors who are on their way to work, coming every morning. They buy a newspaper, they buy drinks. We're going to be supplying with soft drinks and the hot drinks as well as we hope sausage rolls and that sort of things, primarily for the commuters. We don't expect to sell any alcohol, but I didn't know when we did the application, they want the opening times. I don't expect to be selling any alcohol until people come in to either buy their groceries or after midday, but that's why we open at 6. Again, the closing times are regulated by, again, for the commuters. And this, by the way, this traffic may all disappear based on what's happening. There are a lot less commuter traffic now. The closing time is based on the last busy commuter train that comes up from London, so that people walking by the shop, instead of having to do their shopping in London and bring it with them, would be able to pick up groceries and if they want a bottle of wine on their way home.
Thank you very much. Yes, I was going to ask, is there any security for the stock that is on display? There'll be some that will be on display overnight. Would there be any kind of high value items on display? Would you have grill over? Possibly, I don't know. I'm sure.
The lockable cabinet, which is we're actually constructing at the moment, will be completely shut at night. Nothing won't be visible, and that would be only, as you very often see in shops, expensive bottles of champagne, for instance. The chiller cabinets will have a screen that comes down in the evening. In any case, also the front of the shop will be completely screened off from the street in the evening. We can't, because we're in a conservation area, we're limited to what we can do to the exterior, for good reason, what we can do to the exterior of the shop. But in the evening, as all the blinds will be drawn, nobody will be able to see any of those items.
Just one final question to clear something up. You gave a full explanation of what had been happening locally with the trouble that's been reported by the objector. Have you had any experience of trouble since you've been in the village? Or?
Oh no.
I was going to ask what time of day, really. Sort of.
Well, when in the school holidays in the summer, traditionally, and this was something for everybody that grew up here, people would gather down on the recreation ground when the weather was nice, but it was really a sort of summer holiday and weekend thing. That's been going on since time immemorial, and it will go on. And occasionally, I imagine there will be antisocial behavior. But Hugh, who was a local constable here for, he's lived here for 30 years, was a local constable and then an intelligence officer, and has liaised and is liaising all the time. In any case, as he's still a resident with the current group of police who are handling this, feel that it's minor. There are certainly no offenses that have been that warrant any arrests or notices that Hugh has told me about. So the quick answer is yes. There are people that get together. Yes, I would say it's mostly in the afternoons when the weather is nice, and they usually disperse in the evenings.
Thank you very much. That answers all my points.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. You mentioned about your CCTV lasting, I think, the security cameras for 14 days. Would you consider that is long enough in the event that there should be an incident in the future? And would you consider that, I'm surprised that the police hadn't particularly asked you for 28 days, because that seems to be the normal. Are you quite happy with 14 days on your CCTV cameras?
On this point, we've taken advice from the security company, and they are fully accredited under what we understood to be the current governance. That 14 days was adequate, but there's very little cost or effort involved in making it 28 days. It's just a question of storage, data storage, and that's very easy to effect. If it was made a condition of the application, we would have no problem complying with that.
Chairman, sorry,
Thank you.
can I just clarify in response to the chairman's question, Mr. Rose, are you offering that you can change your CCTV storage from 14 days as set out in your application to 31 days?
Yes, or 28 or whatever the law allows for. It's
It's-
essentially it's just a because it's all digital and it's all stored on a drive. I think the drives are perfectly adequate for probably 180 days, but I don't see any problem complying with that, and we would be happy to do so.
So you'd be happy that your application would say that CCTV is retained for 31 days?
It's absolutely fine.
Thank you, members. Members, we'll take that there is a minor amendment to the application that the CCTV retention period will be 31 days. Just to clarify, there's no particular law on retention periods. It's the experience that Essex Police would normally ask for a 31 retention day period on CCTV, just because of the vulnerability of the preservation of data should an offence be recorded on the CCTV equipment. I appreciate the applicants also need to be mindful of their obligations under the Code of Practice for CCTV as set out by the ICO and the Surveillance Commissioner. However, it's not unusual, but if the applicants are happy for that to be amended to 31 days, Chairman, we will make that alteration.
Okay, thank you very much for that advice, Emma. Just before I move on, are my colleagues both okay with the questions now? No further questions in the light of what has been discussed and revealed and the potential amendment for the CCTV. Okay, no further questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, members. We will now then proceed to closing statements. I invite the applicants, Mr. Rose and Ms. Jones, to make their closing statement. Mr. Rose and Ms. Jones, you may summarise any points you wish to make and comment on the replies given in response to questions, but you may not introduce new matters. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little confused, but we have a very brief summation. It just references a survey that was done in the village locally about 3 years ago. It's very short. Can I read it? Or it doesn't, it's not an actual summation of what we've done. It's one paragraph of why we think we've met all the objectives.
Providing that's not a new matter, I think that's allowed.
Okay. A local survey was undertaken by the parish council about 3 years ago. 100% of the respondents, when asked what would most enhance and benefit the village, replied a village shop. We've gone to a great deal of expense, time, and effort to deliver this under very difficult circumstances, and we would hope that it would become an essential local service for years to come. The support we have had from the community at large has been overwhelming. Our ambition is to reward their support with an excellent, well-stocked and well-run store. In our application, we have paid close attention to the licensing objectives as laid out in the Licensing Act of 2003, and I believe we can comply, though this is for the committee to decide. I also believe we have satisfactorily addressed the issues raised by the sole objector. We both thank the committee for their time and efforts in considering our application.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I will now ask Emma Wisby, our legal advisor, if there are any matters which require clarification or advice before we adjourn for deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, there is no points of clarification I need to give on the application, but however, I would just remind you members, although the objectors are not here with us today, their representation to the application stands as submitted. In terms of the application, as I said, there's no points of clarification, but just to remind members that the applicants have very kindly agreed to extend the retention period of their CCTV from 14 days as set out in their application to 31 days. In regards to determining this application, members, please can I remind you that the purpose of this hearing today is to examine this application in light of the representation that has been made, and your determination is based upon the Council's own statement of licensing policy, the statutory guidance as issued under Section 182 of the Licensing Act, and you must have regard to what steps are necessary for promotion of the 4 licensing objectives. Chairman, each application must be considered upon its merits. As pointed out during the hearing this morning, the objectors have referred to other premises in the locality. Braintree District Council does not have a cumulative impact policy, therefore you cannot take into account the number of other premises with a licence into account in determining this application. You need to consider each application on a case-by-case basis, so you cannot impose conditions which are not necessary. If you are minded to impose conditions, the question that I would ask you is, what evidence have you heard that says that they are necessary, and are they proportionate to the size and scale of the premises which this licence would operate within? Your decision must be evidence-based. Whilst you can take into account concerns of local residents, you must have had evidence in your presentation today during the hearing, or in the application, or in the letter of representation to base a decision. We do not have a standard licence here at Braintree District Council, so if this licence is granted, it will be subject to those provisions as set out in the application. Chairman, I will retire with you. Should you need any further legal advice, I will provide that to you and announce it before you announce your decision. Chairman, sorry, actually, there's just one point I'd like to make in respect to opening hours. There has been concerns about the opening hours, and I would particularly draw your attention to paragraph 10.15 of the statutory guidance, which states that shops, stores, supermarkets should normally be free to provide the sale of alcohol for consumption off the premises at any times when retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based upon the licence and objectives for restricting those hours. So, Chairman, I would then draw you back to that your decision must be evidence-based. Chairman, there's nothing further for me to add at this point. Therefore, I will hand the meeting back to you to adjourn for deliberation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Emma, and drawing our attention to those points you mentioned. Members, we have now heard all the evidence for this hearing, and we will now adjourn for deliberation. It's 11:13. I will now adjourn this hearing of the Licensing Subcommittee for deliberation until 10:30 a.m. on Tuesday, the 4th of August, 2020. And I will now hand over to Emma again to close the meeting and end the public broadcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just remind the applicant, you may not make contact with the members of this subcommittee while they're in deliberation. And again, whilst the objectors are not here, as this is being broadcast on the YouTube channel, that advice also then is extended to the objector. They may not approach the members of the subcommittee whilst they reach their decision. So please, can the webcasting officer please confirm that the YouTube channel